funny now.
It's very good for you, laughter.
It is good for you. There you go. It's food for the soul. There you are. Well, thank you for coming, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I've got the laughs now. I've got the giggles. I wasn't expecting that. I was so seriously setting up and then just start to laugh. Okay, it's fine. It's good. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah. If you could give a short synopsis. If you could give a short synopsis for everybody. Oh, sorry, got my chest.
Well, there'll be outtakes as well.
Yeah.
They'll be the best bit.
They'll be the best. Oh, there we go. So yes, if you could, obviously we've had a conversation beforehand. If you could give kind of like a short synopsis of kind of like your background and kind of like what you do now, your business, your book, and things like that. Is that all right?
Yep. Sure.
Great. Okay.
Yep. So I grew up with friends with special needs, neighbours. So it's always been sort of like part of my life. And I started doing radiography. Did a year of radiography, and we had a young man with Down syndrome come in for an OPG, the tooth X-ray that goes round your head. And the staff weren't very accommodating, really, and weren't very understanding. So I thought, I could do this. So I left and went to train to become a teacher and went straight into special ed.
Wow.
So I left special ed coming up for 21 years, because it was when I had my son, who's going to be 21 this year. So I took all the fun bits to me and focused on those. So in special ed, we teach everything via a sensory curriculum, sensory approaches, because that's how babies learn, and they learn everything about the environment around them by, how big is it? What does it taste like? What does it feel like? And it's still a really important part of our learning as well. If you ask someone to describe a noun, they're likely to use, lots of sensory vocabulary. It's also very grounding. Find lots of senses in meditation and stuff. So I'm obsessed with anything and everything sensory. I would go into any shop and find something sensory. I was in B&Q this week, and it was just like there was guttering, there was big sponges. It was really exciting. So anything sensory. So I called my business Willows Sensory Service and have a sensory room at my house. When I had my son, I was supposed to go on supply, but unfortunately I wasn't very well when I was pregnant. But I had a bag of sort of tips and tricks. I'd got my, in case I had to go in on supply. So I'd have a bag with things in some bubbles, a homemade shaker, a chiffon scarf, a water sprayer, that kind of thing, a little feather duster. Because these are all things to address the senses and also to address and support our interactive approaches. So we would use physical interaction, musical interaction, intensive interaction, and they're all things that would be, useful for that, things that tried and tested. Obviously, it's all still trial and error because, we're all different,
Yeah.
But it's a handy bag of things to have.
Okay.
And that's where the title of my book came from. Sarah's Sensory Starter Pack was me having this bag that I'd got for when I was supposed to be doing supply.
Okay.
So, yeah, and my book is just lists of ideas of activities to do involving the senses. Lots of them are sort of cheap, or I use lots of recycling resources that are already sort of lying around. There is a bit of theory in it, but most of it is just practical ideas of lists of things that you can go and do.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not a list of really expensive resources that schools need to spend loads of money on, or parents and stuff like that. It's stuff ways that you found to stimulate senses and sensory stuff with things, I don't know, around the house you can go and buy, it doesn't cost the earth, and that'll help
Yeah,
children.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I wrote it with teachers in mind, but it's absolutely, brilliant for parents and carers and stuff as well, because it for that reason, because it is lots of everyday kind of resources. And, schools and parents of a lot of our kids, especially the ones with complex needs, have ridiculous amounts of like cardboard, And you might as well use it, turn it into 101 different things.
Yeah. Why not? Okay. Great stuff. That's us to date. You do me laughing again. Okay, so if we bring it back a little bit, so you didn't always want to be a teacher. It was you had that experience with that child, and then it kind of sparked something in you.
That's right. My sister always wanted to be a teacher, so I never did anything that she wanted to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do. We had a neighbour who was a radiographer, so I just kind of copied. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really until that man came in that I realised that was something that I could do and would enjoy doing. Mm-hmm. And then obviously since doing it, hugely, hugely passionate about it.
Okay. And when you went, did you always want to be an SEN teacher? So, or was it, did you go into mainstream primary first or secondary, or what was your route?
Well, I did my work experience in a special school. I'd forgotten that. That was because it was with my friend, the neighbour with special needs. I went to her school. So that was when I was about 13, I think. And I wanted to go straight into special, but they'd stopped the SLD course when I wanted to go. So I did a mainstream, qualification. But did all of my placements that I could in special schools. And then I got a job straight away in a special school.
Oh, okay. And what type of special school was it? Because, here's a good question for people who may or may not know. There's different types of special needs schools. So what type of special need, what type of children did they cater to in this one?
Okay, so both of the schools I taught in were 2 to 19, SLD, PMLD.
Okay. And for those that don't know, what is SLD, PMLD? And MLD, I guess.
Severe learning difficulties and profound and multiple learning difficulties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And there's PMLD as well?
PMLD, profound and multiple learning difficulties.
Okay. And that is about the ranges of the need of the child? Yeah.
And obviously, there's, we now have profound and multiple barriers to learning as well. So
okay, and how is that different?
That would be someone who, would have might be physically unable to communicate verbally, but would be able to do so, with a communication device.
Okay, and how is an SEN class different from a mainstream primary class?
In the past. A lot freer, I think. Sort of a lot more, personally, I think a lot more fun. So you laugh a lot in special because, it's there's a lot of playfulness going on.
Yeah.
A lot of learning through play. But I think there are more children with additional needs in mainstream now, including some that are waiting for places in special schools. I went to a mainstream school this week and there were 4 boys there that should be in special ed. So I think if people are in mainstream and they've got pupils like that, they can learn from some of the tips and tricks and approaches and things that we've been doing in special ed.
Okay.
Sensory things, like sensory stories and story massage and things like that, little things they can try.
Okay, so are you saying, would you say schools are widening their provisions for children with special needs because I presume a lot of them are waiting for, it could take a long time
because of need,
well.
Yeah, they're having to, yeah.
Okay, and what does that mean for yourself? Do you go into mainstreams a lot as well? Because I thought you just went into SEN schools, but that's not the case like you've just said.
No, I do go primarily into special schools, but I did a course recently that I thought would be useful for mainstream. So I'm just starting now to see if there's any mainstream schools that are interested in any training along these kind of approaches and, some of these things that they can try.
Okay. So what is sensory? Why is it so important for children? Well, as you mentioned, it's not just children with special needs that could access this type of resource and the way of teaching it. But if you can give a better understanding for people out there that may never heard of it. So, what kind of is that field and why is it important for children with special needs? Is it just for children that are non-verbal? Does it help them communicate better? Does it help them calm down? What's the purpose of it?
Okay. To be honest, it's lots of different things.
Okay.
So for children with sensory processing difficulties, a lot of it is needing to explore with their senses and use their senses, and a lot of it is using their senses to self-regulate. Someone might need to, move around or something before they can concentrate on something, or even just like my husband taps his pen when he's thinking. It's that kind of thing. And then we have the sensory curriculum for those who need a sensory curriculum. That would be how we bring things to life. We need concrete, real objects, because if they can't picture a verbal thing, then they need to be able to see it, touch it, smell it, taste it. And sensory exploration is how we learn all about everything that's surrounding us, all about our environment. We learn about it by exploring with our senses. And sensory play is huge at the minute. It's really, really popular with, the mainstream children as well, especially the littlies.
Yeah. Okay. Because they do a lot of it in like EYFS, don't they? A lot of like outdoor play. That's obviously sensory, I would have presumed.
Yes.
The same
field?
Yeah.
I mean, sensory is just anything when you're using your senses. So, a lot of people think of sensory rooms, but I mean, everything is sensory, sort of true. Like, you go for a walk, when you're listening to the birds and you're feeling your feet on the grass, you're using our senses all of the time.
Yeah. And SEN is huge. The different fields you can specialise in. Do you know what I mean? What made you hone in on the sensory side of things?
I think, I don't know really. I think because it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's successful. It's a way in, and it's engaging. You pique curiosity in someone who wants to reach out and touch an interesting object. Joanna Grace says quite often, red is one of the first colours we see. So quite often red is a popular choice of resource. And she says, and they like it moving as well. So if you've got something red and you're, a red bit of tinsel and you're moving it, that's exciting and engaging and motivating. And that might make your child with PMLD, reach, which is great. It's awesome. They might get them to look at it, reach for it, touch it, hold it in one hand, put it in their other hand. Bringing their hands midline is important, things like that.
Yeah. And it's not just about having a sensory room, so you can do it outside of a sensory room as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It is a bit of a bugbear of mine that people get sensory rooms. Again, Joanna Grace, who's a leading lady in the world of, sensory approaches. She runs courses. She's written textbooks. She's doing a PhD at the minute. She writes sensory stories as well. I've forgotten what the question was.
Does it have to be a sensory room?
So she wrote a book called Myth Busting Sensory Room, something like that, to emphasise that quite often people don't need a sensory room, and people will often go and buy, all this expensive equipment without thinking about how they're going to use it or what they're going to use it for or why they're using it. I did... A lady from Ryman Multisensory Stories asked me about equipment in my sensory room the one day, and I said the session I've just had, the man was most engaged with a little toy that was £3 with a little torch.
Yeah.
Because his vision is limited, I need to bring the resources up close to him so he can see them, or to light them on something else. So I have like a white cloth so I can project onto there. Or you can do it just onto a piece of paper. You know, you have the pictures on the wall and stuff. You can put something in between, like a tent or an umbrella. And so you can bring images closer. But I think when people are doing their sensory rooms, they often don't think. And often when people are selling sensory rooms, they put everything on. And that is the biggest mistake people make. If you think of a bubble tube and what's going on there, you know, you've got movement, you've got colour, you've got cold, you've got vibration. You know, there's loads of sensory information on that one piece of equipment. So if you put everything on, what happens is you just get overwhelmed and people sit down and just like, you know, opt out, which, you know, looks like they're relaxed, but they're not. They're not engaging. So it's really important, if you do have a sensory room, that you only put one piece of equipment on at a time.
You see, listening to you there, I think I'd be that type of person to go, right, I can make this the best sensory room. Let's pack it. Let's walls, ceiling, things hanging down, floor needs to be a sensory, water, sand. So, would you call that sensory overload?
Yeah.
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 Oh, okay.
And I think as well, sort of like with there's, you know, more and more people with autism, quite often they're better in something like an immersive room where you just have nice plain walls with no sort of like bumps, you know, how you've got paneling in here, no sort of like distractions other than you've just got the one picture going round and round and round. Whereas what I have in my sensory room is like over the top, you know, things dangling and you know, lights. Christmas at the minute, so I've got Christmas morning theme. So I've got a big fireplace and put the fibre optics behind it, so it looks like the fire's on. Oh, wow. But for some children, they're better with less. You know, it depends on who you're working with and what you want to achieve. Or a lot of the kids with autism and sensory processing difficulties are better with a sensory integration room, you know, where they've got space to move, to stim, to climb, to, you know, move around, you know, or sensory circuits, things like that. Whereas I tend to be more work with those children that need the more sensory stimulation. And bringing sensory stuff to them. So if you've got someone in a wheelchair, they're not likely to feel the sand on their feet. So, you know, we can bring sand to them. We can bring the sea to them. We can bring grass cuttings to them and leaves and things, you know. Yeah. And it's very much about the person. You know, that's another mistake I've seen in sensory rooms, is people just sort of go in and sit down. Whereas you have to be engaging with them all the time. The person that's in there is there to interact and enable and to observe and to just, you know, be with and have quality time with.
So just put them in there and say, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Get involved.
Which is why it's really important that, you know, if you're having a sensory room, before you do anything, I would recommend training. Do a course on sensory about, you know, like I say, why you want it and how you're going to use it and things like that.
So would you recommend, like, if you have a sensory room and you've set it up, but let's just imagine a scenario. You're a mainstream school, you've set up a sensory room, but you may have 4 different children with different type of needs. So would you recommend changing it to meet the child's need? Because one child could be overloaded, but the other one could love it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So if it was in a mainstream school, then definitely I would recommend it to have as a blank canvas or as much flexibility as possible. So, you know, you could meet different children's needs. So, for example, if you had something like, I don't know, a couple of cup hooks, you know, and then for those that could cope, you could, like my fireplace that I've just mentioned, it's just a shower curtain. Got a fireplace on. Yeah. So it's very quick and simple to just hang up. So, you know, if you're in mainstream, you could hang that up and have your lights underneath for those that need it. And it's very quick and simple to take down if you don't. There's also much cheaper versions of things as well that you can buy. So like the fibre optics, the one I've got in my room is like £600. But you can buy these ones called fibre optic whips. And I've just bought some from Temu for like £15, and they're much smaller. So you've got a handle, and then you've got your fibre optic spray like this. But it's, you know, it's much more portable and easy to play with.
Yeah,
and I use them. I call them danglies. I make danglies. So I use the massage couch rolls because I'm also a complementary therapist as well as a teacher. I do massage and reflexology.
Okay.
So the couch rolls are about this long. So I cover those with duct tape and then hang something on like light up tinsel and call them, danglies or wafters or whatever, Because again, we've got a visual thing and the movement thing to make it engaging for someone to look at and be interested in.
So you're not always researching for the new thing on the block, the expensive, sparkly bit of equipment, that they've said is really going to engage a child. You're looking, what can I use? How can
generally
what's good to interact with this child?
Obviously, there are exciting
I bet there is,
pieces.
Yeah.
The magic carpet is incredible, and if you had the money, that is, well worth investing in my opinion. But again, with pieces of equipment, some things you can get cheaper versions of, and some things it's best to go with like a bubble tube. You can get bubble tubes on the high street, but they're just not the same sort of thickness and quality and as safe and durable as the ones from the sensory catalogues.
Okay.
So there's some things, this is why I think, it's really important that you have training and discussions first before you sort of like...
Because you think you've saved money, but you've actually got a knockoff version, which is maybe even unsafe.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned sensory stories.
Okay.
This is, I think I saw it on a news thing or whatever. They were in an SEN school or something, and they were talking about a sensory story or something, but I don't know what it is. So I guess for other people, what is a sensory story? How do you go about it? What's it all about?
Wow. I've just come back from Edinburgh from the Accessible Book and Sensory Storytelling Festival.
Okay.
And we spent the whole weekend discussing sensory stories, so I could go on for weeks. Basically, a sensory story is a story that you bring to life with props. There's loads of different ways of telling them, loads of different ways of storing them. Some people have like story buckets. I quite like having things that kind of link. So if you're having a holiday story, you have all your resources in a little suitcase.
That's cool.
And it's about using our senses to bring the story to life. So I've just written one actually with pretend words in to demonstrate why I would do a sensory story. So I'm going to tell the story and say my made-up words, like once upon a time there was a Fringle, and just with the made-up words. Yeah. And then when I tell the story again, I've got the props to show that, sort of the Fringle is a koala, and the, whatever, and the other made-up word is a jungle. And when you've got the props, the whole story will then make sense. Just, the props for those like keywords to demonstrate that's why we have a sensory story. So we know what's going on. And so they could use their senses to explore different things to go with the story.
Oh, okay. So it's not, what I saw in this video was that they were touching the child as they were talking or something.
Oh, so, okay.
And like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's story massage.
Oh, is that, okay. How is that different?
Sensory stories is about using the sensory props to bring things to life. And you can have lots and lots of props, or you can have one prop. So, if you were doing the Gruffalo, you could have, some orange fur for the fox and a back scratcher for the Gruffalo. Or you could just have one. You could just have the back scratcher. Sorry. And then and the same thing with sensory songs and sensory poems and poetry pockets. They're all the same thing. It's just having a little prop ready with your resource to bring it to life. Story massage, you don't need any props. Story massage is, I'm a huge fan of story massage. It's a great sort of tool to add to our toolkit. It's 10 different moves, 10 specific massage moves, and it's collated by Mary Atkinson and Sandra Hooper. And the training is brilliant. Normally I'm very shy. Normally, if I'm on a course, I'm very much like, well, not me. Because it was story massage, I'm like, no, please, Bagsy, please do it on me. Because it is really, really nice. And the idea is that you can adapt these moves to support your story, songs and poems. So if it was a snake, you might do the vertical wave like this to demonstrate a snake on your body.
Oh, wow.
And the important thing is the communication and the touch, the interaction, the communication, the touch. And it's a really lovely tool.
Oh, is it therapeutic and educational for a child then? I guess it's just more than one thing, I'm presuming.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. At the moment, I'm doing one, bereavement one.
Okay.
So a young lady that comes to me has lost her grandma. So first of all, we have like a little hanky with the smell of grandma's perfume, because the smell and music take you straight back, sort of they're used in reminiscence work, because it bypasses your hypothalamus and goes straight to your limbic system. So it goes past your thinking and goes straight to your feeling, which is why it's really important. So we have, she used to call her Nanny Nunu. So she has Nanny Nunu's smell. And then we have a story massage about Nanny Nunu, which we do as a call and response because she comes with 2 carers. Okay. So, I do a massage on her back and the 2 ladies with her copy the words that we're saying. And then we have a sensory story, which I wrote, which is like the name of Nanny Nunu. Her name was Marion, so Marion down the side and then done bits. And that has sensory props with it. So it has Nanny Nunu liked to talk. So we have one of those toys that repeat things after you. And we have a little play with that. And then we say Nanny Nunu loved the family. And we've got some sensory bottles, some love bottles with various hearts and things in, which the young lady can turn. And then we have, like, I love you, Nanny Nunu, on a Big Mac.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm using story massage and sensory story at the moment for bereavement.
So you can use it for, well, it's a tool that you can use for different things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do a lot of parents use it, or is it quite new? Or I've never heard of it, but why would I? But do you know what I mean? Is it something that's been around a while, or do you have to get training on it to utilise it properly? Or
there are lots of videos on YouTube, especially in lockdown. In lockdown as well, we were teaching kids to do it on themselves and people to do it on themselves. Mary's made lots of videos where she's got like a little teddy bear where she's demonstrating the moves, and there's a book you can buy as well. But once you've done the training, you can access loads that have already been written.
Okay. What's your
I love writing them.
So you write the story.
I write story massages for if anyone wants one. Yeah.
Oh wow! And I know what you're going to say. You post it for free, and like you share it or stuff. Yeah, because there's stuff when we obviously nobody will know this, but we had a pre-chat obviously, and the amount of we just had to stop because you're just reeling off all this information. I was like writing it all down. Like I know so many people. You were like, Nathan, I can just send it you. We haven't got all night for me to tell you every book I've ever read, every person I know of who's interesting. But I just wanted to know. I was like, tell me, this is great. It's really interesting.
It is a very supportive sort of network now with them. Now we've got things like Facebook groups and stuff. Because I think previously it could be quite isolating. So it's nice now that we have so many people out there doing wonderful stuff. Oh, because it's a sensory festival coming up soon. I was
going to ask you that. I saw that on your LinkedIn. What's that all about?
That's Richard Hurstwood, who is an incredibly inspirational, enthusiastic man who does training. And he gets a group of people, some live, some videos and stuff. And it's really cheap. And every time it's on, it's all the people like me that can go into any shop. So there'll be lots of people on saying what they've found in like B&M and IKEA that they're doing exciting sensory stuff with. Richard Hurstwood makes incredible things out of salad spinners, light up resources.
Oh, okay, cool. And so would you recommend people, that are just interested in sensory to go along to it? You'll learn stuff, share ideas?
It's just online.
Oh, wow.
It's just online. So, and then you have I think it's something like 6 weeks to watch the videos.
That's wicked.
It's amazing.
Okay, so you can kind of watch it
Joe Grace does a PMLD conference as well in the same sort of style. That there's lots of people sending their videos and people can watch them.
That's wicked. So it's don't have to take time out of your day to get there, come back.
No.
Oh, okay, that's wicked. What's your favourite piece of sensory equipment?
That's what started Joanna writing her book on on sensory equipment was that question. And Pete Wells is just like, am I allowed to say I'm in love with him? No?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
I thought you paused because you were going to say something bad about him. I was
No, the opposite. My husband heard him talking once and he was like, I don't mind you being a bit in love with him, that's fine. Because he's ace. So Pete Wells writes sensory stories, which are great. They're on inclusive technology, and they've made them into these beautiful animated stories. He also has another story in a comic that's in the supermarkets, but his stories are great. They're rhyming, they're silly, they're fun, they're quite often revolting. And so the kids absolutely love them. But he had a podcast and had all the famous people in special ed on it and asked them that question. Yeah. And all of them said the most important piece of equipment in the sensory room is the person that's in there working with them, sharing the time with them. You know, because it's like this thing, you need someone to... Richard Hirschfeld says you can't just have a vase of flowers. You need someone to bring that vase of flowers to someone, you know, help them smell it, you know, and engage with them. And on the podcast, he deconstructs his sensory stories and tells you all about different ideas you can do and why he's doing what he's doing. But my favourite equipment, I think the same as Jo's sort of opinion after doing all this research on her book, is the ability to make something dark. If you can have darkness, then you can have magic. You can make things pop.
Like a teepee or something? Would that class as?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can use toilet tents.
Okay. There you go, schools. Get yourself.
But a black, because you can get the blackout ones and stuff now, and you can get blackout sensory tents, or just in a room, if you know, blackout blinds, or even just like if you put a cloth over a table and go underneath it, you know, make a little den, then you can make things pop, whether it's with a light up resource, or if you've got neon stuff and you have a UV resource, you know, you can make it really exciting, magic.
It sounds like you're limited by your imagination.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Am I about right on that one?
Oh, yeah.
Rather than getting a catalogue, what do I need? It's like, you know, how can we make this pop? How can we make it dark? How can we make it light? How can I make this wet? How can I make it feel like the sea? Is more the questions you'd ask yourself rather than look for a piece of equipment to meet a need. It's kind of, you're thinking sensory and how can I make it imaginative?
Absolutely.
That on a lot of things.
In my book, I put, I was thinking of snow. What can I use for snow? You know, was it, I don't know, flour or cotton wool or magic snow, or there's 100 sort of messy play recipes. And then I realised I could just go outside and get some snow. So sometimes it's right in front of you.
Sometimes it's quite literal.